Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Men for Life podcast. This is Sean Corcoran, the CEO of Men for Life. Today, I am joined by Abby Johnson, who is the founder of And Then There Were None and of Loveline Ministries, right?
Yep.
All right. How are you today, Abby?
I'm great. we're, we're like living in our camper. And so I'm at my parents' house doing this podcast. And like my mom's in the background, like meandering around. So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I actually thought you were in an office. So had you not said that, I would have just assumed that you were in your office and that you got people behind you doing their work.
I'm like, my parents are just like behind me, like doing housework and stuff. So
I think that's fantastic. You know, the very first one I did, podcast I did was Dr. George Delgado, and he was traveling. So he was babysitting his grandkids. So he did it from his grandson's bedroom with all
awesome.
of the young boy decorations in the background. So
this is just, this is just life, right? And the pro-life movement. It's just, we're just doing life together. So yeah, here we are.
Glamorous.
Glamorous. So glamorous. Yes.
That's right.
In my professional podcast studio here. Yeah. In my mom's house. My mom and dad's house.
Okay. So just to kind of set the tone for what we're doing, and I know I've shared this with you before we started recording, but, my experience this year with the March for Life was my first experience to be fully immersed in it. I was invited backstage with the coalition, which is the first time that's happened. I've only been in this role for 18 months after 10 years of practicing law. So it's a much different experience. And I gave a presentation on Thursday before the march where I said, as I always said, I pointed out my son who comes with me everywhere I go. And I said, the reason that Men for Life and the work that we are doing is so important is because if men step up and lead, the next generation of young men will see this as the way, right? As the way that we should be. We as men should be pro-life. And they can change this and end abortion. And I've always said that in good faith because, I want abortion to end. And I think that it will take a cultural shift to end abortion. And, putting it off on my son wasn't the intent, but that if we do the right things, we can lead the next generation, they can end abortion. Then immediately after that, I went to Life or Death Con and I heard your speech. And the things that struck me were, you said, I don't want to end abortion in 20 years. I want to end abortion today. And you said, when people ask me, will I see you next year at the march? I say, I hope not, because I don't want to be marching for the rest of my life. Those two things, and you said a lot, and we'll get into some of it, but those two things really struck me because it made me realize that it's unfair of me, because I want to end abortion today. It's unfair of me to be putting this off on my son. If I do the work that needs to be done with the goal of trying to end abortion today, every single day while I'm doing this, and it continues beyond me, then at least I've done that work. But if I go into it every day saying, I'm going to do the work that I'm doing today so that the next generation can take care of this problem, then I'm failing. And I believe that. And so I was convicted in those two parts of your statement and many of the other things that I heard. And then I also had my dad with me, who has been, your average from the house pro-life donor, who just wants abortion to end for the last 30 years. And having the conversations with him and the things that he heard and his realizations that, hey, are the people I'm donating my money to working to end abortion today? And that was the big part of our conversation. So then I left that, and on Friday, there were conversations about all of this. I know you came out with your first video, I think the week before that, that I saw, and so there were conversations about this going on kind of backstage, and the big thing that I took away from that was that people were disregarding a lot of it as something that will just pass. And I was thinking in the back of my mind, I've been talking to my dad nonstop for 24 hours. I think this is going to have a bigger impact on your average pro-life donor than people think. And that just kind of continued. And so I got home and I wrote about it. And then I had the idea that, what do we want? As a movement, what does the pro-life movement want? What should the pro-life movement want? Is the work that every organization set out to do when they started the work that they are working towards today? I assume that work was to end abortion. And so it just came to me that, hey, I can have these conversations. I'm not necessarily on either side of this issue. And if we go to the extremes and we say the abolitionists and the what they call the incrementalists, right? I find common ground with each side, but I disagree with each side also. And so I feel like I'm in a comfortable place to have these conversations. So just to open up the floor to have all of the conversations with people from each side of that. So that's where this idea came from. It's been received really well. I think people want information, and I just want people to be able to make informed decisions and not just follow anyone blindly. So that's where we came to this idea. I'm going to give you my position, and then I'm going to open the floor for your position, and then we'll just have that conversation. So
Sounds great.
My position is I believe that the unborn have the same value and dignity of a born child. I believe that if we believe that, then the only way to show that we believe that is if we agree that there should be consequences. If you kill a born child, then we can't also believe that the unborn has the exact same value without believing there should be consequences if you've killed an unborn child. Now, that said, I also believe that the messaging of Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry for the past 53 years has been incredibly effective. I think that there are many women who are not victims, and I know that that is part of your position. I think there are many women who are victims of that messaging. I think that if that messaging has not been effective, then we wouldn't be in this fight today. And so I think that to disregard the effectiveness of that messaging is disingenuous. I think that the question then becomes, will we for the next 20 years say, well, or in 20 years, if we say the messaging of Planned Parenthood has been really effective for 73 years, therefore we have to just keep trying to change the culture. Or if in 40 years we say the messaging of Planned Parenthood has been really effective for 93 years, therefore we have to just keep changing the culture, then we failed. So there has to be a move forward. And I think that move forward does end with equal protection laws. I think we're not there yet, but I think that can't be a perpetual excuse. This has to be a problem that we solve, not an excuse that we keep forever. And so my position is that we need to work on solving that problem with timelines and get it solved and then move forward to the next step. So I hope I laid that out clearly for you.
Yeah. I mean, I would say I completely agree with that. I think that's a very fair position to take. I think something that we can work toward, and let me back up. So let me say I'm not an abolitionist because I am for compromising if we need to, right?
Yeah.
The abolitionist position is like, no, murder one all the time, every woman knows what she's doing. There's very few victims, only if they're sex trafficked, right? Like that's when they're a victim. I think there are a lot fewer victims than we probably realize, but I think there are a lot of people that are victimized by abortion culture. And I think you can be victimized without being a victim. I think being a victim is like truly not having agency over your decisions, not having agency over your body. But certainly we can, I think many of us are kind of victimized by the culture of abortion, right? That we've been told that abortion is a compassionate option for women, that it's, better to choose abortion than to live in poverty, to raise a child in poverty, to be a single parent, all of these different things that we've been told for the past 53 years, right? And I certainly saw that. I mean, even when I worked at Planned Parenthood, I remember in 2007 when Planned Parenthood, I was there when they changed their marketing position from one where we were telling women that, it's not really a baby, it's And that wasn't working anymore with women. And so we changed our marketing position. That was when we came out with Care No Matter What. And that was when we came out with one answer to every question. And we were to pivot women back to one answer. So even if they ask us, is my baby going to feel this? What does the baby look like right now? Whatever the question was, is there risk to the abortion procedure? All of this, we were to pivot them back to one answer. And that was, women choose abortion because they care about themselves, their current family, and their future family. And I remember in 2007 sitting in a room with marketing professionals and hearing that. And I remember still fully pro-choice, pro-abortion at that period of time in my life. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, we're really marketing abortion as an act of compassion. And I remember thinking that, and I remember at the time thinking, that's really smart. And I remember the first time I said it to a woman. I remember the first time we had to memorize it. We had to say it to women. And I remember the first time I said it to a woman, I would remember her face if I saw it today. I remember what I was wearing. And I said it, and I was thinking to myself, okay, I wonder if this is going to work, right? And she was a religious woman. She was a Christian woman, and she was tearful, and she was asking me, is this something that God will forgive me of if I have this abortion? And I thought, okay, all right, let's see if this works, right? And so I said it. Women have abortions because they care about themselves, their current families, and their future families. And I'll never forget, Sean, she looked at me and she just breathed this sigh of relief, I guess. And she said, oh my gosh, she said, thank you. Yes. She said, I'm having this abortion because I care about this baby. And I remember sitting there and just thinking, holy crap, that actually worked. And it worked every single time. Every time a woman came with a question, with a concern, we gave her that answer of compassion. You're doing this because you care. You're doing this because you care about your baby. And they took it in every single time. So do I believe that women have been victimized by the industry, by a society that has told them that choice is a compassionate response to an unplanned pregnancy? Yeah, I do. But do I believe that they have completely lost agency of their body and they're truly victims? No, I don't believe that most of them are. Do I believe that some of them are? Yes, I do. I absolutely do. I've been a sidewalk advocate long enough. I've been on the front lines. I've been in front of these clinics long enough to have seen some things. I have seen a mother physically dragging her child by the hair into an abortion clinic. I have heard the testimonies of former abortion workers physically holding patients down on the table as they're screaming, no, I don't want to have an abortion. So do I believe that there are women who are victims? Yes, I absolutely do. Should those women be held accountable for that abortion? No. The people who actually victimize them, the people who were actually the perpetrators of those abortions, they should be held accountable for murder. So that's really my position on this. I don't want any woman to go to jail because I don't want any woman to have an abortion. And I believe that the law is sort of threefold. I think that it's a deterrent for bad behavior. I think that it is a teacher. And I think it is here to hold people accountable for bad behavior. And so I think that is the entire intention of the law. I'm not an attorney, so I can't say that with absolute fact, but I do believe that is the intention, is my understanding. And so I know from my own personal story that if abortion had been illegal in 2000, when I got pregnant the first time, I would have never had an abortion. I would have never taken that risk. And that would have changed the trajectory of my life. I would have been forced to go to my parents, my lovely parents who are walking around behind me. I would have been forced to go to them and say, Mom, Dad, I screwed up and I need your help. And they would have yes, been disappointed that their plan for me didn't turn out like they wanted, but they would have very lovingly welcomed a grandchild at that time, right? And they would have supported me, and that would have been fantastic. It would have changed my plans, right? But that one decision would have changed my life. I wouldn't have ever walked into a Planned Parenthood to work. I wouldn't have the souls of 20,000 babies stained on my conscience for the rest of my life. I wouldn't have gone on to have a second abortion. It would have changed my life. I think that's true of many women. 70% of the women who come through our ministry, and then there were none, have had abortions. That's what led them into working in the abortion industry. So I think the law is important. I think it is a teacher. There were many women who came into our clinic at Planned Parenthood who said, well, I've always believed abortion is wrong, but it's legal, so it must be okay. So I think all of those things are important. The difference here, I think, between me and say like an abolitionist is that I do believe that sometimes compromise may be necessary. So, I look at seatbelt laws, for example. When I was a kid, and probably you as well, Sean, I remember all of the crash test dummy commercials that
Yes.
came out, right? And they would have commercials that would come out, and you would see, what happens if a crash test dummy runs into a wall, right? And you would see, oh, this is what their neck looks like. This is what happens to them, right? Because it was a teacher. Because when we were growing up, seatbelts were not compulsory. And so they were educating us to show us this is what happens if you don't wear your seatbelt. So I think maybe there's, something that could happen in that, right? Where we have an equal protection bill and we have sort of a sunset period where we have maybe a 2-year sunset period where we have 2 years of really hardcore education to the public in that state, where we're educating people on where they can go to get reproductive care, what abortion actually does to women, the dangers of abortion, how it harms women, how it harms the family, how it harms men. What's taking place, prenatal development, what's taking place in the womb, why abortion is wrong, how it harms the baby. The same sorts of things that we did with these crash test dummies, but we do it in regards to abortion. And we give, 2 years for women to get their reproductive health under control so that women know you're not going to have the easy out of abortion. You're not going to be able to simply order pills from Mexico, from China, from France, from Belgium. You're not going to be able to go to these 73 websites and easily order abortion pills and get them within a matter of days. Because if you do, there's going to be a consequence involved. Is it murder in the first degree? I don't know. I don't know if that's where we land officially right off the bat. Maybe it's a lesser charge. I don't know. But I do believe that maybe we need some compromise there in the beginning. And I'm up for that. I think that may be necessary because we have lived in a culture of death for 53 years. And I do think that we have to recognize that.
So much good stuff to talk about. I want to back up for a minute on the idea of victim, because you bring up something really, really important. When I use the term victim, and I think that you've helped me to make sure that I make a distinction from now on. But when I use the term victim, here's what I'm thinking in the terms of my thoughts on how we can end this. Is I'm thinking about, the young lady, the mother of my child, who came in, and this is 29 years ago now, probably 29 years ago, like this month, came in and said she was pregnant. And then, as I explained the reasons that she couldn't have an abortion because it was a baby, she explained to me that it was not a baby, and that the purpose of her getting an abortion at that point was to have the abortion before it became a baby, right? That it was going to be membrane, right? It was cells that they were going to just scrape off, and much of the same stuff that you hear now. So that is, of course, 29 years ago. But fast forward to today, and we're in this whole new landscape with the abortion pill. And there's all these posts on Reddit and probably other places, but on Reddit where women are posting a picture of the embryo in their hand, and they're saying like they feel betrayed, like they feel lied to, like they were told this is not what this was going to be. They cannot believe that it has eyes and ears and a nose and fingers and toes, right? But that they believed that it was just going to be a large blood clot or something like that. And so when I used the term victim in my thoughts, that's kind of what I was referring to, is that messaging that it's not a baby, it's not a baby, it's not a baby. Now, I did hear what you said whenever you brought up the Planned Parenthood got to a point where they're like, we can't say it's not a baby anymore. And I think that's important because your experience in there is something that I don't have and that I otherwise wouldn't have known. But I think we can't disregard that there are so many people who do not believe that it's a baby. You brought up victims in a different sense, which I think is super important when we start talking about criminal penalties, because that is another way that they are currently being victimized. So my thought is, if we are going to acknowledge that there are people who still believe, and I understand it's not everybody, that this is not a baby. If we pass a law that would lead to the prosecution of a mother, how do we weed through whether or not, without doing the educational part first, how do we weed through whether or not this specific woman had the intent and knew what she was doing, or believed the lies of 53 years that it was not a baby, that an embryo is not a baby, it's going to be membranes, a clump of cells, whatever. How do we weed through that in order to make sure that that we are looking at intent?
Yeah, I mean, I think we do that. How do we do that in every other case? I mean,
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
All right, well, we do it with an investigation, and it gets hard, and so I'll work through this with let's go through it. So we do it with an investigation. So then my question would be, wouldn't every woman just say, I thought it was a clump of cells? Like how fast would that become the answer
Maybe,
that everyone would know?
maybe, but let me kind of offer this. So
Yeah.
I ordered abortion pills recently
Yeah.
and put the whole process on my social media and YouTube to show people how easy this was, right? Because in the state of Texas, abortion is technically illegal, right? But there's no penalty. So you can pass a law, but if there's no teeth to it, I mean, what does that mean, right? Nothing.
Right.
So, so in my home in Texas, I ordered abortion pills, and I went through all of the steps, right? All of the little click through boxes and everything. And it did say in the forms on the paperwork that you will see body parts. It said it very clearly that you will see body parts as you pass this fetus. Okay. So I guess my question then is, if they tell you very clearly this is going to happen, but then you don't read through it, who's responsible for the information?
I think that's a fair question. I'm going to push back only because, it's so easy today when our iPhones are updating, every 7 days, and you have to click the I agree, right? That nobody reads the boilerplate language. The prescriptions that we get. Let's remove the abortion pill from this part of the conversation. How often do you read all of the paperwork that comes with every prescription that you get? Like, I don't know that, and you may be an outlier, but I don't know anybody that does that.
I mean, I
I
read the
think,
important stuff. I
yeah,
do. I make sure that if I need to take it with food, I take it with food. I make sure that if I need to take it in the morning or night, I look through it.
Right.
When I had my chemical abortion, I certainly read through all of the all of the instructions. Um, Now, when I had my abortion, I was told, when I had my chemical abortion, I was told it's just going to be a blood clot,
Yeah.
right? So, to your point, 29 years ago, that is what women were told. Now, most women, I would say at that point in time, and I think that's why there's a lot of pushback in the pro-life movement for these types of bills. And I think a lot of it is coming from women of a particular age who had abortions, who are now, in their 50s and 60s, right? So, for example, I know a woman who, she's in her 60s now. She got pregnant when she was 18 years old in high school. She and her boyfriend went to an OBGYN, and she went and said, I've missed my period. I don't know if I'm pregnant. Right. So they did a pregnancy test, and the doctor never came in and said, yep, you're pregnant. Right. He never verified that. But he went in to this 18-year-old girl and said, hey, I'm going to do a little procedure that will bring your period back. It's called a menstrual extraction. Well, menstrual extraction is a code word back in the day for abortion. Okay. She had no idea. She was an 18-year-old senior in high school. She had no idea what that was. So she and her boyfriend were like, okay, yeah, all right, bring the period back, right? That's what we want. So she thought he was helping her, that he was diagnosing her with a problem, and that he was going to fix it. He did not verify that she was pregnant. She had no idea until later in life, as she is a pro-lifer, she hears something called menstrual extraction and pairs it together and realizes, oh my gosh, that was the word that they used for an abortion back in the 70s and 80s. Okay, that woman was truly a victim.
Right.
Many women back in those time periods, they had no idea. They didn't know what was going on. We didn't have ultrasound technology back then. I was born in 1980. My mom never had an ultrasound with me. When I was pregnant with my daughter, who's 19 now, that was the first time my mom had ever seen an ultrasound. Um, you know, this, as we evolve technology, as medical technology evolves, as all of these things, tend to evolve. We know more and more, about the preborn. We know more and more, and so our awareness becomes greater. And so I think it becomes more and more difficult for women to say, I just didn't know.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, 60% of women who have abortions have already delivered a child. So you'd be hard pressed to have any of those women say, I did not know it was a baby. Well,
Right.
you've already delivered a baby.
Yeah.
So that is a baby, right? I am finding less and less as I go out to abortion clinics, as I talk to the women going in. Even in our own ministry, Loveline, we have abortion determined women call us all the time. They're looking for an abortion provider, and that's why they call us. And we talk to them, and our question is, what can we do to have you cancel your abortion appointment? That's our first question. And, we ask them questions, do you understand that you're pregnant with a baby? And they all say, yes, I know I'm pregnant with a baby. What we're seeing now is really a shift from this kind of unknowing to a shift in kind of bodily autonomy. So they say, I know I'm pregnant with a baby. I know abortion kills a baby. I just believe that my right to choose supersedes the right of this child to live.
Right.
And so, are there going to be women who are truly just unknowing? Yes. But I think that those are really few and far between nowadays. I mean, we have information available at the touch of a button on our cell phones. We can look up fetal development at any point in time. You know, when I volunteer at pregnancy centers and I talk to these women, most of them have looked up pictures of fetal development at 7 weeks, 8 weeks, 9 weeks. They've looked it up, they've seen it, they know, and they're still moving forward with that decision. The ultrasound is not a powerful of a tool as it used to be, and pregnancy centers are confirming this with me as I'm going around and speaking. They're saying, that used to be like the magic pill, right? We would show them the ultrasound, they would immediately fall in love with their baby, and they would choose life. Now the pregnancy centers are saying to me, that's just not the case anymore. They're seeing their baby, they want a picture, they take the picture of their baby, they're walking out, and they're still getting the abortion. And I'm seeing the women on the sidewalk, the women holding the picture of the baby as they're walking in, kind of mocking me as they're saying, yeah, I'm going to go kill this baby right now.
Yeah.
There has been a shift. And honestly, Sean, I think since Roe was overturned, I think, not to hyper spiritualize this, but I do feel like, and the Bible talks about this kind of like the hardening of the heart, right? Mother against child. And
Right.
I do feel like we're seeing that. I feel like this is just sort of the natural consequence of our sin. But I do feel like when Roe was overturned, there was almost this release of demons
Yeah.
that we haven't seen before. I've been a sidewalk advocate since I first left Planned Parenthood. Actually, before anybody even knew, before it was a news story, I was out in front of my own clinic, trying to talk to women. And there's been such a shift with the women going in 16 years ago to now, just a shift in their heart and their mind and the way that they see their own child.
And we've all seen those videos, like on TikTok, or or on Instagram, of people either outside of a pregnancy center doing something similar to what you just said, like, I'm going to kill this baby, or celebrating their abortions, or saying, they understand it's a baby. But like the things that you're saying, I'm not discounting that. I think that those things are real, and that's why it's important to me for me to point out that I do not believe that all women are victims of this messaging.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that it's important, just as it's important for all of us to recognize that some women are victims of this messaging. It's important for all of us to recognize that not all
Sure.
women are victims of this messaging. You brought up Loveline, and I think that this is important because, and you may tell me that there's a distinction here in what you guys do, but I know there's a lot of questions regarding pregnancy centers. If a pregnancy, let's say these laws pass, and a woman comes into a pregnancy center, and then she leaves to go get an abortion. And so my question to you, though, is going to be about Loveline. Someone calls Loveline, and you try to get them to cancel the abortion appointment, and they don't. Do you then have to report them?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't have the answer to that. I don't know. I do know that I don't know the answer with Loveline. I do know the answer with And Then There Were None. I know that if someone came to us, let's say, Texas made abortion actually illegal, right?
Right.
And someone called us and said, I'm actively working right now with an abortion provider in Texas, and we're providing illegal abortions. I do know very clearly that we would have to call that in to authorities, because they would be actively admitting that they are participating in murder. And so
Right.
we would have to call that in.
So then let me just go with, because your question earlier was fair when I said, how would we determine whether someone was intentional or unintentional, and and we would investigate, right? And so just using how we normally proceed in criminal law, if someone comes to you and says, and it's credible, and comes to you and says, "Hey," and let's say that you're a nonprofit, right? Like, I think this would probably apply even if you're a private citizen, but since that's not what we're talking about, let's say we're a nonprofit ministry. Someone comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm about to go home and kill my husband," you
Yeah.
know, then there's a point where we are then obligated to notify somebody,
Right.
right? And so if someone calls Loveline and says, "Hey," you try to talk them out of it, and they say, "No, no, no, no. Like I'm going to go," and let's just make it easy, right? There's no question of intent, and they say, "No, I'm going to kill this baby. Like I'm going to abort this baby. I'm going to get this baby out of me."
Yeah. Then I guess we'd have to call. Yeah.
And and I think that's a concern of the pregnancy centers as well. But here's the bigger concern: does that then make it almost impossible for either the pregnancy centers or Loveline to do the work that you've actually set out to do? Because who's going to call if they know that at the end of that phone call, there's a chance that there's going to be sirens?
Okay. So let me, yeah. So, okay. So I've thought this through. Okay. So let me kind of present it the way that I think about it in my mind. And some people are going to listen to this and be like, "Ew, that's harsh." Okay. But this is just the way I think about it in my mind. And I don't mean it to be harsh. This is just
It's a hard
the way,
topic.
this is just the way I think it should be. Okay. In our society, because I believe abortion is murder. Okay. If it is murder, then we have to treat it as murder, right? Okay. So I know this is a concern for pregnancy centers. I get it, right? Because that's their work. That's their job, right? And we've all been so programmed to, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean this is our life's work, right? So we're like, we want to help women not have abortions, okay? But let's reframe it in a different way. We want to help people not murder, okay? So let's not call it abortion anymore. Let's just call it murder, okay? Because that's what it is. So pregnancy centers will say, well, how are we going to help women not murder if we have to call the police on them and report them for murdering someone? That kind of seems ridiculous, okay? Or they're like, how are we going to help people heal from murdering? Okay. We want to live in a society where it is so shameful to murder someone, right? We don't want to live in a society where it is acceptable to murder an innocent baby. So who would ever be like, and this is where it becomes people are like, oh, this is mean. But who would ever be like, man, I really want to start a healing program for serial killers. Like nobody out there is like, it's been on my heart to start a healing ministry for serial killers. Right? Like nobody in the pro-life movement
Sorry,
is out,
I'm trying not to laugh,
but
but
nobody
it is ridiculous.
out there in the pro-life movement is trying to do that, right?
Right.
Because I mean, honestly, we don't care, right?
Right.
Because they're serial killers and they murder innocent people. Okay. But we've become so soft on abortion that we don't even consider it murder. So we're like, oh, that woman that's had 6 abortions, man, she really needs healing. All
Right.
right. Well, we want to live in a society where a woman that's had 6 abortions would literally be considered a serial killer. Now, we don't live in that society right now, right? So we're all healing and butterflies and hugs and programs and curriculum and all this kind of stuff, right? But eventually, I mean, hear me when I say this, not right now, but eventually, we want to live in a society where people who are murdering their unborn children are seen as murderers, right?
Yeah.
So that is a complete, and I understand, it is a complete paradigm shift in the pro-life movement. I get it. And it's going to take us a while to get there in our minds. But that is truly where we want to go.
And so then to the question that I asked, it would be that and this may be a simple answer. The question really was, if Loveline, and then I'm going to go back to the pregnancy centers, but if Loveline receives a call, if people know that when they call Loveline, if they choose abortion, they will be reported and they will see sirens, then people will stop calling Loveline, right? Just kind of
For if
working
they're,
through
if
with
they're
that.
thinking about having an abortion, yeah.
Right. But that's the goal of Loveline, is to talk people who are thinking about having an abortion. This is my understanding of what I thought you said. People who are considering having an abortion, to talk them, to try to help them to work through canceling the appointment. Did I say that right?
I've
Everybody will recognize that we just had a couple technical difficulties, and we are back with Abby Johnson. And Abby was just explaining to me, or you were just explaining to me and our viewers and listeners, what Loveline does outside of just helping abortion vulnerable women to cancel those appointments.
Yeah, so we do help women. We do get a lot of calls. Here's my son coming in. We do get a lot of calls from women who are considering abortion, who think that we are, an abortion line, or that we help fund abortion or whatever. A lot of those come through social media. People on social media, referring pro-lifers, referring these women to us, oh, you should call Loveline, they can help you. But we're also a social support network for, women who maybe they're single moms, single dads, families who need additional support, with their children. So that was actually originally how we started. So I originally started Loveline for families. I didn't actually start it to help women who are considering abortion, because I thought that's what the pregnancy centers were for. So I thought, well, we don't need that, because we don't need to do that because the pregnancy centers have got it. But then we realized that we had to step in, because a lot of the pregnancy centers started referring women to us, because we were taking care of needs that the pregnancy centers would not handle. So we were, buying women cars. We were paying their eviction notices. We were actually stepping in and supporting them in financial ways that the pregnancy centers were not equipped or choosing not to do. And so then it really, we were getting all of these referrals from pregnancy centers. So it really, we kind of morphed into something else. But that was not our intention. Our intention was really just to support families. But now we do get a lot of calls from women who are considering abortion, women who have abortion appointments, who are kind of led to us mainly through social media.
So then would it be fair to say that, as my question was posed, if women began to get concerned that, hey, I can't call Loveline because, if I tell them I'm considering abortion, and then I tell them I'm going to go get one, then they're going to report me. Loveline would continue to operate in the other ministry that it originally set out to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And that
And
would
so that
be
just
great.
wouldn't be a part of the ministry anymore. And look, and I met with a team from a pregnancy center not too long ago, and I kind of had that same conversation with them, that if abortion became illegal and people stopped having abortions, would they still be able to provide all of the services that they provide? And they said absolutely, and I think that's something that gets missed a lot, especially from the other side, saying that we only care about the baby until it's born. The work of the pregnancy centers in many cases, if not most cases, goes well beyond when the baby is born. And
Oh
so,
yeah,
so I,
absolutely. I mean, most go
I
up to
don't
like
think
2-3 years after birth. But I think,
right,
again, I think it's just like how we have to have this paradigm shift in our own minds. Like, if your neighbor came to you and said, "Oh my gosh, my husband is driving me insane. I am planning on killing him when he
yeah,
gets home today after work."
incredibly,
Like,
not like just like my wife probably tells her staff before she comes home if Sean hasn't done
yeah,
something,
like,
I'm
"Oh
going
my
to
God,
kill
I'm
him.
going to kill him."
Yeah,
No, not like that. But like, I have the poison ready. I'm going to poison him. Like, would you be
right,
like, okay, well, let me like give you some options and let me like pray with you and let me, but no, you would be like, dude, like, I'm intervening. I've got to save this guy's life, right? You wouldn't
right,
be like, well, let me just try to walk you through another way, blah blah. No, you would be like, stop that. You're not murdering this guy. And if I have to get officials involved, I'm going to get officials involved, right? Because I'm going to save your husband's life, right?
yeah,
That's exactly how we're going to have to get to with abortion, right?
okay,
This is murdering a child. If a woman comes into a pregnancy center and says, I have an appointment tomorrow to murder my child, what are you going to do? You're not going to be like, well, let me give you some pamphlets about adoption. Let me give you a referral to the WIC office. You're going to be like, no, we're going to do everything possible to stop you from murdering your baby, right? And if that
right,
means calling the officials, we're going to do it because it is murder. That's where we're going to have to come as a society. Like, that's where we're going to have to go as a pro-life movement. Are we there yet? Nope, because our law doesn't match that.
yeah,
So it would be ridiculous for us to call the authorities right now because they're going to be like, what am I doing? Right? Abortion's not
right,
illegal. But we are going to have to get there eventually. If we want this to stop, we are going to have to get there eventually. And, I always do this question when I go to college campuses. I'll say to these college kids, I'm like, okay, let's say you were going to your very favorite concert and there was a parking spot right up front and it said, if you park here, you're going to get a $40 fine. Would you park there? And every single kid raises their hand. Yes, I would park there. I'd pay the $40, right? But then I say, okay, what if it said you're going to get a $40 fine and you might go to jail for 48 hours? Maybe. Would you park there? And all of their hands go down. They're like, nope. And I'm like, why not? Like, it's not a for sure that you're going to go to jail for. It's just a maybe. And I mean, it's like your favorite concert. So like, wouldn't you take the risk? And they're like, no, I'm not taking the risk to go to jail. No, no way. I'm like, exactly. And because the risk is too great, they wouldn't take the risk. Most women would not take the risk. And we see that even here in the state of Texas. There's not a district attorney in the state of Texas that would, go out here and prosecute a Texas doctor for performing abortions. Okay. But the threat of prosecution is great enough that not one Texas abortionist has restarted their practice of abortion. Not one. because the threat is great enough. They know nothing's going to happen to them. They know that no Austin DA or Dallas DA is going to come after them and prosecute them. But the threat is great enough that they are not willing to take the chance. They're not willing to take the chance to lose their license, pay a $100,000 fine, possibly go to jail. They're not willing to do it because the threat is great enough. So, like I said, I don't want any woman to go to jail, but I want babies to be saved. And I want women to not experience the regret of abortion. I've seen it too much in my own life. I've seen it in the lives of these women. I've seen it destroy women. I know women that have committed suicide because of the implications of abortion. I know women who have struggled with eating disorders, suicidal ideation, depression, anxiety, all of these different issues. And I'm like, gosh, if that hadn't have been on the table for you, you wouldn't have these issues. You wouldn't be struggling with this. I think the most merciful thing that we can do in the pro-life movement is to not even make it an option, not even allow it to be an option. And that's not me being mean or whatever. I'm thinking of this in the most loving. I'm like, what is the most loving thing we can do is to not even allow abortion to be on the table. I mean, if my child was a heroin addict, if I knew someone that was a heroin addict, I wouldn't be like, gosh, I really hate that you're a heroin addict, but here is a syringe of heroin for you. I hope you don't choose it, but if you do, here is a syringe of heroin that I know is good and does not contain fentanyl. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't be like, well, here's a good option for you if you are going to do heroin. No.
Right. And to be fair, I don't think that the people in the pro-life movement are performing the abortions, which I think would be closer to that analogy. But I hear what you're saying.
No, but they are passing bills to regulate it, to make abortion safer, right?
Yeah.
And that is the argument that we have been saying, me included, right? As my position has evolved on this, me included, I have said, I have said this from my own mouth. If a woman is going to have an abortion, she should be in a place where it's safe. I have said that. Okay. Many other pro-life groups are saying the same thing. That's what we're saying when we continue to regulate abortion over and over again. When we say, well, we want to ban mifepristone because it's a dangerous abortion drug. Okay. What is that going to do? It's going to do nothing, because all the abortion industry is ready to start doing misoprostol only abortions. They don't need mifepristone to do chemical abortions. Mifepristone is not used in the majority of countries worldwide. Most countries do abortions through misoprostol only. They don't need mifepristone. So if
would that then lead to the passing of a live embryo?
Yes.
And this may be me showing my ignorance on
You're
that.
right.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right.
You're right. So mifepristone kills the baby. Misoprostol expels the baby. So if you remove mifeprex, you're doing a couple of things. You're removing the ability to do abortion pill reversal. And you are also, it's more dangerous for women. Misoprostol only abortions are more dangerous for women. And you're increasing the risk of babies being born alive and suffocating to death on their own lungs. Okay. But the pro-life movement is like, well, at least we want, and I've been one, okay? We want women to have an in-person visit with the doctor before she takes these chemical abortion pills. Literally bills out there right now being pushed by pro-life groups saying if they're going to do a chemical abortion, they need to have a visit with the abortionist first.
Right.
Why? Like, what would the point of that be? Because they're trying to put more regulations on the abortion industry instead of just ending abortion. Well, I don't want to.
So my interpretation.
I don't want to do that anymore.
and I want to hear yours, because I think it's going to be different based on what you're saying. My interpretation of that, without ever having looked into it, just hearing that, right, that they want to put that you have to have the bills that require a doctor's appointment, is twofold. It makes it more difficult for the obviously it must make it more difficult for the abortion industry, because otherwise they wouldn't fight against that. But that it adds a step, and in adding a step, it may dissuade people from making the effort, right? That's how I interpret it, and maybe it's just an incorrect interpretation of the goal of it is, the more steps you add, the harder you make it, the less people are gonna take the steps, and maybe that's a naive way to look at it.
I think that has been the argument, and that's certainly what we have been saying, is that, well, we just want to put up more and more barriers so that women can't get these abortions. But we have a lot. I mean, we have a lot of states right now where abortion is technically illegal. There's no surgical abortion sites. There's, heartbeat bills. We have all of these states with all of these regulations, with all of these barriers, all of these things, ultrasound laws, all of the stuff that we've been doing, and abortions continue to rise. Right.
Yeah.
So
Let me ask you a question about that, because you
yeah,
say that abortions. I'm sorry, I want you to answer the last question I asked. I don't want to
no,
get
it's
in the
fine.
way of my own.
I could get behind regulatory bills
Yeah.
if I thought that regulations were actually working to decrease abortions.
Okay. So is it then when people and I don't want you don't necessarily have to speak for other people, but it sounds like similar to what I hear when I see abolitionists say that or the pro-life establishment is how they call it, is trying to pass bills which increase abortions. Is that the logical progression that they're using to make that statement?
No, I don't think they're doing it intentionally to try to increase abortion. I don't
Right.
think
I don't
that.
either. So I'm trying to figure out, like, what do they mean when they say that? And
I don't
the
think
way,
that's the heart of it. I think
right.
that I don't think that's the heart of it at all. I think
No. And that's not what I meant. I don't either. I didn't know
I
if
think
maybe
that's what
that's all the
abolitionists
abolitionists
believe.
could mean. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I think that's what abolitionists believe.
Okay.
Because they think that the heart of the pro-life industry is evil. And
Oh, okay.
so I think that is what they believe when they say that.
Okay.
I don't think that's the case.
Right.
Um, but I do question, Sean, like, why some of these groups do come out against these immediacy bills. Like, I do question that. It's one thing to remain neutral, right? It's
Yeah.
one thing to say, I don't, I don't like this bill, or I don't think it's going to go anywhere. And that's what a lot of them will say. Well, we came out against it because we don't think it's going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't think it's going to go anywhere, then just remain neutral, right?
Right.
There's a lot of bills that I think are kind of worthless, right? But I'm not coming out opposing them, because I think any pro-life effort is a worthy effort, right?
Right.
So I'm not coming out against them and being like, that's a ridiculous bill, we all need
Right.
to oppose it, right? I'm just kind of neutral on it. I'm like, well, okay, if it passes, all right, we'll see what happens, right? And that's kind of how I think we need to be with pro-life bills. Like, well, let's just see what happens. Let's see how it goes. And that's how I think we should be with these bills that are asking for immediacy in the law. We've never had one pass. We actually don't know what would happen, right?
Right.
I think it's a new effort. It's a fresh approach to ending abortion. And I think we should see what happens. We can't even seem to get one out of committee and to the floor for a debate,
Yeah.
because we have pro-life groups working against us to do it. And I just think that's kind of wholly unfair.
Yeah.
I think we should just try it.
And here's my thought on that is that for someone to say the reason that we are fighting against this is because we don't think that it'll ever pass, I think is disingenuous. The example I use is this: I have a big tree out in my front yard, and my oldest two children have started climbing it. My two 7-year-olds want to climb it, but it's too big for them. Like, I don't want them climbing it; it's too big for them. But they also can't reach the branches, so they're not going to climb it. Like, I know that. I can sit there and watch them, and I know that they will never be able to reach that branch today, right? Until they're bigger. But what I don't do is go out there and hold their head down and say, you can't climb this. Not because I'm telling you that you can't climb it, but because it's impossible, right? It's impossible for you to climb this. When the reason it's impossible is because I'm holding them down, right? And that's how I kind of feel that the pro-life establishment, when they come in and fight against these bills that they're saying that will never pass, like, if you say that it's never going to pass, but the reason it's never going to pass is because you're going to stop it from passing, then I don't think that you really believe that it's not going to pass. And I'm okay with that. Like, if you have a different reason that you're fighting against it, be honest. Give the real reason that you're fighting against it. And let's work through that. Because if you're saying the reason I'm fighting against it is because it's never going to pass, when really the reason it's not going to pass is because you're fighting against it, then you're not ever going to get to the heart of what the real issue that you have with it is. And I think they may have legitimate issues with what happens if it does pass. And those are the things that we need to be having conversations about.
Yeah,
So,
I agree. I want a dialogue about that,
right.
but it seems like, in my experience anyway, like if you begin to have a dialogue, you're immediately shut down. And in my experience, it's been like, well, it's almost emotionally manipulative. Like, well, you just don't understand, why we're doing what we're doing. And I'm like, well, you're not helping me understand. You're just telling me don't ever text you again. I want to understand. Like, so talk to me about it. Let's talk about it. Let's meet about it. Let's work through it. Right.
Yeah.
Um, because I do believe everyone's heart is to end abortion. I think the strategy is different. But I don't think anybody wants abortion to continue, right? I don't believe that. But I do think that our minds, maybe we're not, I think maybe not everybody is ready for the paradigm shift that needs to occur. And so, because I think like being pro-life is sometimes, and this is what I think about the abolitionists, being an abolitionist has become like who they are. They are abolitionists first. And that, like, I'm not pro-life first. Like, I am obedient to God first. And so that obedience has led me to have these evolving positions on abortion and pro-life law and this sort of thing. And I'm still evolving and growing. I don't ever want that part of me to stop evolving and growing as I grow in my obedience to God. And it does, there is a cost for this, when you kind of put this out there and you feel like you're kind of moving away from that, pro-life establishment, and people begin to question your motives, or and that's my motives are still pure. I want to end abortion, and I just want to end it now. I don't want to have a 10-year plan for how we end abortion. I don't want to have a 20-year plan for how we end
Right.
abortion. I just want to do it now.
And
And that's what
so,
I'm working toward.
I think that gets to the heart of what I'll make the last real question that I have, because I do want to be respectful of your time. And that is, you said it comes with a cost when you kind of shift away from the traditional pro-life position. Why do you think it is? And let me be more specific, because I think that it is, and you can tell me if you think I'm wrong, but I think that it has happened because of the use of the word criminalizing women, right? I think that the use of the terminology of criminalizing women in the beginning of what we'll call the shift led to people maybe separating, pushing back on you. Do you think that's a correct interpretation? And then, what do you think it is about the people who have been working with you for 16 years that has led to them distancing themselves from you and your position, including or other than use of the terminology criminalizing women?
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement, that it's like the criminalization of women piece. And that's not actually my heart. My heart is to bear out consequences for anyone involved in the murder of the unborn. So it's not criminalizing women, but I think the marketing of this position was done very poorly. And then you have the abolitionists that came in and really screwed it up. And they came in real hot, and they do say things that are terrible. They do say things like, well, we're fine if a woman is executed for having an abortion, like an eye for an eye. They do say ridiculous things like that.
And I don't know them. Do they mean that, or are they being provocative?
No, I think they mean it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they mean it. And so, I say, like, they are their own worst enemy. They are, the worst at bringing people to their position, which is why that's why I'm not an abolitionist, because I do want to help people understand that abortion is murder, that sometimes women are victims, sometimes they're not, and that we have to have a consistent approach on abortion. We cannot say that, like in most states, in all states really, that if a man puts a pill, an abortion pill, into a woman's drink, and she drinks that drink and her baby is killed, that, okay, that's murder, right? Rightly so. That's murder. She unknowingly took these pills in this drink and it killed her baby. That is murder, and he should be charged with murder. And everybody would agree with that. Every pro-lifer would agree with that. But if we have that same woman, same pill, same drink, same baby, and she knowingly takes that pill, the majority of the pro-life movement would say, oh, that's not murder. Well, why not? That is completely inconsistent. So there has to be some kind of consistency there. We have to find some sort of consistency there. And I think, I'm not saying that it's only the woman that's responsible. I think there are many people that are responsible at times in a woman's decision-making process to have an abortion. And anyone that does, just like in a murder trial, if someone paid for a murder to be fulfilled, that person is charged. I remember Pope Francis said that abortion was like hiring a hitman. Well, if I paid the money to a hitman, I would be charged with a crime. A woman pays a doctor. when she has an abortion. And he may carry out the crime of an abortion against her body. And so we want to charge the doctor. In the pro-life movement, we typically have said, well, we want to charge the abortionist, but we want the woman who paid him to go free. I mean, that's just inconsistent. And so I think we do have to find some consistency in our law. I think that we do have to do it with a heart of love, not with a heart of punishment. But I think that that has not been vocalized well. And, to your second question, I think people that have chosen to distance themselves from me since I have taken on this position, I think there's a couple reasons why. I think one, these are people that don't really know me. I think they know me because they see me once a year, at the March for Life, and we give hugs, and they're like, oh, I know Abby Johnson. But they don't really know me. They don't know my heart. They don't know who I am. They don't know the work I put into this movement. They don't know the work I put in to these ministries. And so I think they see, a public facing figure, but they don't see who I really am. For people who work with me and see who I am and my real friends, they have seen this evolution in me, and they're like, man, this makes sense. What you're saying makes sense. And I'm on board. Our entire ministry has taken this position. It wasn't just me. And I wasn't over here like, and I'm going to convince every one of you that this is the right position. I just started talking about it. And our entire executive team was like, man, like the way you're talking about this is really getting me to think about this differently. And, and then it just kind of naturally was like, we want to be an organization that takes this position. And we started talking to our clients, these former abortion workers. What do you think about this? And every single one that we talked to was like, yeah, we agree with this. This is what we believe. Abortion is murder. Somebody should be held accountable. They're seeing the women every day coming into the clinics. Some of these workers, they leave the industry not because of something that happened to a baby, not because of something that happened to a mother, but they're leaving because of the callousness that they see inside of the industry coming from the women who are coming in for abortions. And they're like, these women know. These women know that they're pregnant with a baby. It's not like it was 20, 30 years ago, even 15 years ago when I was in the industry. And, there's so many women that have had abortions that are now taking this position. They're like, I was not a victim. I chose this at a moment of selfishness. I chose me over my child. And they're speaking out and they're saying, if this would have been illegal, I wouldn't have had an abortion. It would have changed my life. It would have changed the trajectory of my life. And I just think these are voices that we need to be listening to. These women that have actually put themselves on the table, these women that have worked in these abortion facilities, these murder facilities. I think we need to be listening to them. I think we need to be taking their experiences to heart. And I think, really to your second question, I think change is hard. And I think it's scary. And when you're asking an entire movement to rethink abortion, to rethink their position, to rethink their organizations, to rethink their work and how they work and what they're doing, I think it's scary. And uh, it's challenging. I'm kind of challenging the narrative, not just me, but other people are kind of challenging the narrative. Like, we don't want to do this forever. I don't want to have a March for Life in 10 years, So what does that mean? Does that mean the March for Life no longer exists? And what does that mean? That means everybody that works for the March for Life no longer has a job. That's scary for the March for Life, right?
Or does it mean that we're marching to celebrate that we succeeded?
Yeah, maybe.
Like who doesn't want to do that?
Yeah, maybe.
You
But
know?
like this year at the March for Life, I felt sad. Like I didn't feel like joyful, I felt sad. I felt just a heaviness. Like we're marching and everybody's here like, oh, hey, oh. And I just felt like I wanted to cry the whole time. Because I just thought, man, we're losing. Like we're here marching, but we're losing. And what does this translate to in the real world? We come here and we march, but dang, like we're losing in every state. We're losing this battle. And so I just felt like a heaviness that I haven't felt before. And so I think when you begin to kind of threaten this belief that we've all believed for a long time, that we've all kind of rallied around, and that becomes sort of fractured, and people have to start rethinking what they're doing and what their job is and what their organization does. I think people, they shoot the messenger, right?
Yeah.
And
So
I may be one of the messengers, and so they're mad at me. And that's okay.
so then, and I know I've already said this, but let me pose this, and this is really how we'll close this out, because I think this is really important, going off of what you just said. Do you think it's possible for us to end abortion in this country and without becoming unified? And if not, how do you see us becoming unified? And by us, I mean the pro-life movement as a whole.
So I think that we may have to. I don't want it to be that way, but I think we can end abortion without becoming completely unified, even though that's not my goal and that's not what I want. But I think we can. I think it's going to be peacemakers that do the work, not peacekeepers. And I want to be a peacemaker.
Share what that means.
So peacemakers are people that they want peace to be the end goal, but they're willing to disrupt sort of this false sense of peace to get us to the end goal of true peace. So they're willing to be disruptive. They are willing to sort of disrupt the narrative. They're willing to sort of be in a fracture in order to cause a fracture, in order to really bring true unity and true peace. Peacekeepers are people who ignore problems so that they can just, go along to get along, right? Or is that how it says? So they'll ignore the real problems just so that everybody can get along. Let's just all get along, right? But they're ignoring the real problems. And I don't want to be a peacekeeper. Like I want real unity. I want real peace. And I want to unite with people who want those same. I want to unite with other peacemakers. And Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, not the peacekeepers." So I see a real problem, and the real problem is abortion. And I want to end it. And I want to unite with people who also want to end it now. And so it may not be everybody who is pro-life that comes to that position. And if it's not, then that saddens me, but okay, like I'll fight with the people who are willing to fight with me, right? And there may like I said, there may need to be some compromise made, and that's okay. I'm willing to do that too, for the end goal of ending abortion. And I hope that we get as many people on board as possible. But I do think it is possible. And I can't remember your second question.
That was it. If my question was if it is going to take unity, like what can we do to unify?
Yeah, well, I think we need to keep having the conversations like we're doing today. I think we need to keep having the dialogue. I think we're just starting to have these
Right.
real hard conversations. I mean, people run from it. They seem to run from it in Christian spaces. They don't want to have the hard talks. They don't want to have.
It's easier to be tribal.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, like you just asked me, like, well, what about Loveline? Well, I hadn't even thought about that. I've thought about it and then there were none, but I hadn't even thought about Loveline before. So that was a great question. It made me think about it. And I'm like, yeah, I guess that is what we would do. Right. And I guess in the end, that's what we want. We want to be back to, we want to come back to supporting families, to supporting those that are having babies. We want to build up the family. And we don't want to reward those who are thinking about murdering their babies. We don't want to reward that mindset. Eventually, that is the paradigm that we want to move to. So, like I said, are we there yet? No. But that is where we want to go. And I think we have to think about it in those terms. We have to think about it as murder. And I say this, I've said this a couple of times, and this is kind of crazy, but I'm going to say it anyway. So when is the last time you heard someone say, yeah, I really, at one point in time, I struggled with bestiality? Like, have you ever heard anybody say that? Me neither. I've never heard that. I've never heard like a podcast or any guest be like, yeah, man, I used to really be on that bestiality train, but now I'm totally off of it. Right. Like nobody ever says that. Right. Why? Right. Because bestiality is so incredibly shameful. You know, there's people that do it. Right.
Right.
You know, they're out there. We've heard of it. We've heard of it because it does happen, right? But we don't know anybody. We don't know anybody in Christian spaces. We've never heard of it. We don't know, right? Because it's so shameful. It's less shameful in our culture to murder your own child than it is to commit an act of bestiality. That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
And so we've got to get back to a space in our culture where it is so utterly shameful to murder an innocent child where you wouldn't dare utter it.
Here's a thought that I've had recently, in just in having all these conversations, and that is the Me Too movement. When the Me Too movement came out, it was immediate, right? Like everybody was like, well, the problem is identifying the problem. The problem is that men in patriarchal societies have been indoctrinated into this belief that they can use everyone else for their personal pleasure, right? The acknowledgement was there that this has been going on. Really for thousands of years, right? Like not even 53 years, thousands of years.
Right.
No one came out and said, we need to change the culture before we start coming down hard on these men.
Right.
Right. Like it was immediate. It was, we need to come down hard on these men and let them know that they will not act like this around women. The end.
Yep.
And so it's just, I feel like, somebody might tell me it's not a fair comparison. I'm going to share that with the remaining guests that I have in this series. And somebody might tell me a reason that it's not a fair comparison, but it's the only thing I can think of where we have a clear acknowledgement of an indoctrination into something which is an unhealthy viewpoint, right? Mm-hmm. Like I would agree with the idea that men should not be using women,
Right.
to just dispose of them.
Right.
And in many cases raping them.
Right.
I do understand that this came about because of thousands of years of patriarchal societies, like, and so, but once we pointed it out, we said stop, and that was it.
Yep.
And it was an uprising, and it wasn't, all right, guys, we need to come up with a plan so we can change society so that we can
Yeah.
that we can then get these men to stop abusing and oppressing and sexually using women.
Right.
Like it was like, hey, now, you know,
And it's kind of it's similar to Sean. I think it is a fair comparison because the abortion industry is a transactional society, right? It's like a usury sort of thing, right? So we're using women for the abortion industry is using women for their benefit. So it is similar in that way. One of the differences, though, is that when women were coming out and saying, this guy, like that Harvey Weinstein guy or whatever,
right?
those people were not coming out and going, yep, I absolutely did that. And I love abusing women, right?
Yeah,
But in the abortion industry, they do. So in the abortion industry, the doctors happily come out and go, yep, that's me. I love aborting babies. I'm
yeah,
proud to be an abortionist, right? That is how low our culture is right now. It's more shameful to be a rapist than it is to murder babies.
yeah.
That's how far we have fallen.
Well, I think that's a lot to think about, Abby, and I really appreciate you coming on and clearing things up. I think that some of the things that you said today were I'm just going to use the term toned down, but you've used the term evolved a couple of times in this conversation, and so maybe that's really what it is. As we have time to kind of think about everything and take in more information and more viewpoints to be able to evolve our positions, and I told you before we started that the way I was going to classify my position was as it stands today, because I'm learning, and my position could change through the course of these conversations. So I appreciate everything that you brought up. I appreciate you taking the time to share. I know that there will be people who learned something from this, not just about you and your position, but about the situation that we're in, and really what it is that the pro-life movement should want, and how is it that we're going to get there. So thank you for your time today, and thank you
Of course.
for joining us.
Of course. Thank you so much, Sean. Thanks for all the work you're doing too.
Thank you, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.